Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 266th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss the Mideast crisis. What is our country's role in it, and have we been right so far? Today's panel leads off with Bryan Laubaugh, President of R&B Financial Services, then Susan Hanlon, retired Dean of the College of Business at the University of Akron. Then Patty Haskins, retired math teacher at Wadsworth Senior High School, followed by Mike Reese of Howard Hanna Real Estate and current candidate for Wadsworth City Council. Bryan, the Arab-Israeli conflict has been going on for over 100 years. Is there any end in sight, and is the U.S. helping or hurting?
Well, it's a very difficult situation, a mixture of culture, various religions, various, I guess you could call them tribes of people. You know, you got Sunnis, Shiites, you've got a variety of very embedded folks over there. I'm not sure we completely understand what is going on. Many countries have tried to figure that out. The French, the British, and it's just it's a very difficult situation. And add into that, we have the state of Israel now, and they're not going anywhere. We need to make sure people understand that Israel is not going anywhere. The UN, provided that piece of land for them, something that they really haven't had for millennial. They are actual, they're actually indigenous to that particular area, whether they were slaves or a free people. So I think we can put that off the table as far as somehow they don't actually belong there. But I think we're trying as a country to bring the parties together, and it's in fits and starts. Trump in his first term had I believe it was the Abraham Accords. That was a first step. But when you have countries like Iran that was supporting their proxies, Hamas, the Hezbollah, the Houthis, in doing a lot of their dirty work, made it very, very made it very difficult. And then October 7th came along and basically opened up a full-scale war. I think that's the only way you can characterize this. Israel is fighting for its life, and they're doing pretty well. Just recently, I think everybody's aware that the United States inserted itself a little bit. And from all reports, other than if you're listening to CNN, we've pretty much crushed most of their capability to enrich uranium and to develop a nuclear device. And every administration, from Bill Clinton to Obama to Trump, have said emphatically that Iran will not get the nuclear capability to produce a bomb. That needs to be something that they hear loud and clear. There can be no daylight in any political party or any administration. Iran cannot create a nuclear bomb or have the capability to create that particular type of a weapon. Iran is now willing to talk. And so we'll see where that goes. So I think there's some optimism there, but we need to, get ourselves in a position where we can help and create a situation where all the parties can move forward. I think there are some countries that are willing. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or Qatar, however you want to pronounce it. They've been very interested in peace in the Middle East, and hopefully, something will take off.
Susan, what's your take?
Well, I don't think there'll ever be peace in the Middle East. I mean, I have to, Trump had a little bit of a hot mic. Well, I guess it wasn't a hot mic. He knew what he was saying when he said, these countries have been fighting forever. They don't even know what it's like to not fight in the Middle East. Like they don't know what that's like, And then he said something. He said something else that he shouldn't have said. But anyways, I don't think there'll ever be peace. I really think the bigger agenda is just to keep it contained between two countries at a time. The thing that we don't want to happen, and I think it's why I think we are right, and I think we are helping to have a show up force and be like, dude, we will come in and stop this because there's not going to be another world war. But and I think it's encouraging at this point that no one is stepping up to help Iran. It doesn't appear China, Russia, North Korea, and those are the four that tend to stick together and are most likely to start something big. So yeah, it'd be great if there'd be peace in the Middle East, but I think because it is religion, it's just irrational. These so many of them are just willing to, they're martyrs. They're willing to die. I don't know what their lives are like. I really don't. I agree with Bryan. It's hard. Our world and our culture and our beliefs are so different from, not from Israel, but from Iraq and the Middle East. I don't think that we can get inside their heads and figure it out. So I just think, and I think it's going to be like this for a long time. We just have to contain things. And, there's so many more weapons now. It's not just boots on the ground. It's, of course, all the drones. It's cyber attacks. That would really be something, if that starts up. Cyber attacks, biological warfare, chemical warfare. Great, get rid of nuclear, but there's so much else, and a lot of these countries are not there. I don't think they're afraid to use them if they have them. So I think we should be worried about more than the nuclear. And I don't know. I think to have peace be the ultimate goal, it's great, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Patty, I'm dying to hear what you have to think.
Actually, I agree with a lot with what both Bryan and Susan have said. Susan, I agree. I'm not sure peace is ever going to be there, at least in the form that we would expect it to be. This territory has been ruled by so many different forces at different times, different religions, different cultures. And each group assumes that they have the ownership of their particular part of land or of area. And there's areas that they think that they should hold on to. There are groups that feel they should control Jerusalem and that the Israelis should not. And the Israelis feel, no, the Jewish people should control this area. And to them, it seems that an idea of peace is more of a tolerance of one another. But that does not mean that they're going to end up fighting with one another. Their culture is, and I've heard this said many times, the culture and mindset in the Middle East is something that we as Americans do not understand. If you live in Israel, for example, watching the news, during the airstrikes between Iran and Israel, and each night they were getting warnings to go to a shelter, and you had to shelter in place. The alarm would come over your phone. You'd have so much time to get there. And that the fact that all of these buildings and all of these houses have designated bomb shelters to go to. Would you know where to go if there were an attack on the United States? I mean, that's not something that we can understand or live with. And the fact that you would do that every day and then just get up the next day and go on with your life like nothing had happened. This is something that they're living with and is inured into their personality and is very, very difficult with them. I also, religion does play a big role in this, but I think even more so is the fact that we also have extremist religions. If you look at the ruler of Iran and that staunch autocratic feeling that he has and the dictates to his people and the lack of civil rights that the people have, and that this is driving it and driving, what's going on in Iran and their persistence in going after other countries. Our concern as the United States, of course, is to make sure that this doesn't overflow. But we're dealing with countries that have autocratic rulers with a great deal of money. You look at Saudi Arabia, you look at Qatar, you look at United Arab Emirates, all of these different countries. And they have a vast amount of oil, a vast amount of money, and resources that are going to allow them to continue to go on and on in these different fights. As Bryan said, the fact that Iran is supplying money to the Houthis and into Hezbollah and to Hamas to allow things like the occurrence in Palestine that we've been dealing with now since the October attack. How do you stop that from happening? I think that's going to be an extremely difficult task. Right now we are in a 3-day peace settlement between Iran and Israel, but the Israeli-Palestine Gaza situation is still not resolved. So no matter what happens with Iran right now, we still have this other conflagration that is going on that doesn't seem to be settling or going to be settled anytime soon. And I think all we can do is continue with negotiations where possible to try to bring some tolerance or acceptance with one another and to try to contain anything that is happening. Finally, as Bryan said, I am extremely pleased that countries like China and Russia have not come in to help Iran and North Korea. They was very much concerned that they were going to do that. And so far, they have not raised their head to help out.
Yeah. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Oh boy, this is a tough one. If anyone else had the answer, we'd be the most famous person in the world. I agree with a lot of points that each of you has said. I mean, it's such a complex situation there. You have Israel, that became a state in 1948 through UN resolution. The problem is, and I think we all can agree that the Jewish people deserve a place to call their own. Through the centuries, they've been persecuted. They've all through Europe, through the world, really. So we want them to have a place that they can call their home, where they can be safe. The problem is this is an area of the world that 3 of the biggest religions on earth have their holy places. So I think that alone is going to be the biggest hindrance to peace. You have a state that identifies as being a Jewish state. It's purely a religious state that has control over these places that a lot of other people believe that they have some sort of claim on as well. So that's a huge one. with as far as Iran, well, that's another complex issue. That part of the world has been host to so many different powerful empires throughout history. And, they have this kind of a historic feeling that, that they're an important part of the world, that they have this history that is very powerful. And I think that that's part of their problem as well, is that they have this feeling of, they have hegemony over the area. Um, Part of that, though, I think, is the United States. We have this, we have a long history of creating our own enemies, and I think Iran is one of those that we've helped create through, in 1953, the prime minister of Iran had moved to nationalize the oil industry there, which then prompted a coup d'etat by the military that was supported by the United States and England, where the Shah of Iran had come into power, and that was through our meddling created a lot of resentment from the people that lived there. That then in 1979 led to the Islamic Revolution. I mean, part of my feeling is if we would quit meddling at that level in countries, some things like this might not happen. I mean, they created enough resentment that a fundamentalist Islamic group was able to take power, and that was, the whole start of problems in Iran with throughout the rest of, recent decades. Um, and that's not just an Iranian problem. That's the Middle East. You have all these countries that are ruled, not all of them. There are a few that are monarchies, but they're ruled by these religious fundamentalists, and that, in my mind, is the number one problem, because they have such strict interpretations of their religious text that they're saying, oh well, the Jewish people have to go, or Islamic people have to go, whatever. And that's the biggest hindrance to peace in my mind, because as long as you have that way of thinking, when's the fighting ever going to stop? It's never going to stop, ever.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be a cultural shift at some point where people are like, listen, and I know, and people in Iran and people in Israel, most people everywhere want to just live their lives. They want to have safety. They want to live their lives, be able to, not worry about going out in the street. And it's never going to happen as long as extremists are running these countries. And in my opinion, that's it.
And the thing is with that, this idea of nation building, and that our country should go in and
I think she froze.
I think she froze.
Yeah, she's frozen.
I think she probably
that's a problem, though. She brings up a good point, because it's
Yeah.
not just in the Middle East that we've created enemies.
Yeah.
By going in and messing with their governance. Look at South America.
Yeah.
All the countries in South America that have problems with this are because we.
Yeah. Mike brings up a good point, and you can make a connection. I was listening to this podcast. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but the gentleman was making the connection between corporate America and our meddling. So he brings up the point that, one of the reasons that he thought in his study of history was that large oil companies had large contracts with countries in the Middle East to provide services, to pump their oil, to bring it to market. And those countries were going to get X. And then when Iran decided that, that wasn't going to be good enough, and they're going to nationalize it and basically strip those corporations. Well, when one of them is Halliburton and Chevron and Sunoco and all those others, you bring in the United States government, and they say, well, wait a second, you just can't change the rules on these guys after they've sunk billions of dollars into your country. Right. And next thing you know, something happens. Now, on that same thing, real quick, have you seen the series Landman?
Yeah.
I have not.
Where those drug cartel basically, and he basically tells them, you don't know what you're messing with here.
Right. With the oil companies, yeah. Well, and that, I mean, that gets, I don't want to get too far off the topic, but, that's why you have a lot of people that say we need to use our own oil,
Right.
drill, baby, drill.
Yeah.
If the oil companies can make enough money with oil from the United States, then we wouldn't be over there messing with
Right.
their stuff.
We're not. I mean, part of that is I think that these companies they are so big, they are so powerful, they have so much money that they do believe that they can control oil in the Middle East. And that's our problem. We create. Why are we being attacked by terrorists from the Middle East? It's not because they just woke up one day and hate us. They see what we're doing. They see what other Western countries are doing. That they're not blind. We often are our worst enemies here.
Well, and then they have, so then the next question is, well, why don't they monetize their own oil? They have these corrupt, extreme leaders.
Well,
Yeah.
they did in Iran,
who
and
don't
that's
have
what
any interest
led
in that.
to the.
And if they did it, they would keep it all to themselves anyway.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Right.
what happened in Iran. They did.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what. Then we got involved, and then then the people hated us because we got involved, and then there's a revolution. Then you let some
And I would think
crazy
most
fundamentalists take over.
Most of the people in Iran, they're good people.
Yeah.
They just made the mistake of probably being a little too passive when it came time to these extremist groups. And it's not like a large part. They have the Iranian Guard that more or less protects the current extreme, government, the Ayatollahs and all that kind of stuff. But the rest of the people, I mean, if you see their day-to-day life, it doesn't look much different than a New York City street.
Have you ever seen pictures of Iran from like the 1950s and 60s?
Yeah.
You would think you were in America.
Yeah. There's a lot of places like that. As you travel the world, it's amazing. I mean, I'm always like, even though we're saying, oh, we're all so different, but they like a lot of Western stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you let an extremist group take over, like Hamas in Gaza and the caliphate in Iran, you're bound and determined to bump up against Israel. And trust me, they're not going to lay down anymore.
And
they're ready to go.
They generally have the United States full support. I mean, even if we, any current administration says, oh, we're looking at both sides. Really, they are at least the last time I looked, they were the number one recipient of foreign aid from us.
Yeah.
The one thing I've never understood though is why the Jews are so persecuted.
Yeah, I don't
know.
This goes back to ancient times.
Yeah, but why?
Especially in Europe. I don't think anybody's persecuted the Jewish people more than Europeans have in history.
I get it.
Hey, Patty, welcome back.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I've been listening. My internet went out on my computer.
Oh, no.
So I'm on my phone now. So.
Okay, well, I got one question. I read recently where 80% of the people in Iran do not support the caliphate.
I believe that.
80%?
Yeah, 80%. 20% support the Ayatollah, and 80% do not. And most of the people in Iran were not in favor of the revolution in 1978. Now, do you think that we're ripe for another revolution? Well, not we, but the Iranians ripe for another revolution?
Could be a tipping point.
It could be.
It would have to be so widespread because, I mean, obviously the current administration has the military might on their side.
That's what I was going to say.
They would need help from somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody would have to come in and support them and encourage.
You haven't probably read, once again, this one podcast I was listening to. The truck drivers in Iran went on strike. And it lasted for like 2 weeks. And then what happens is the extremists, they send out their people and they make an example of several people by hanging him off of a bridge, torturing them, and then everybody goes back to work. And there was talk of another strike of some government workers because they haven't been getting paid on a regular basis. So, this could be a tipping point where people feel like, hey, we've got some momentum here. We just need to get rid of these people that are running our country into the ground. So,
Yeah.
Iran has a great position in the Middle East as far geographically. And it's a shame that they are using that position in the way that they are by supporting this terrorist groups. Instead of trying to foster peace, they're subverting it through financial support, weapons, and money.
Well, I think that we have almost a consensus on this panel that there's no end in sight to the Arab-Israeli conflict.
Who was it, Nostradamus, that predicted that the end of the world and Armageddon would occur in the Middle East?
Yeah.
Oh, that Nostradamus, that Dickens.
Well, I mean, there's a
things.
precedence there. I mean, they've been fighting there since
Israel.
humanity began.
Right.
The Dome of the Rock. There's some stuff going on there, but rest assured, we have plenty more Moabs. So if we haven't got them in this round, I wouldn't be talking like, hey, we got it over here. When you can fly a plane 36 hours
without stopping. Yeah.
My worry with that though is, you're creating whenever you commit any kind of violence, whether it's, murdering somebody on the street or bombing somebody, what you're doing is you're creating the next generation of terrorists. You have a next generation of people that are going to resent you. And that's my worry, is like, it's never going to end. It's never going to, you're always going to have somebody that hates you. An eye for an eye makes the world blind. What Gandhi
Israel
said,
in 5 days took out their air defense. Most of their aircraft, took down their banking system. 18,000 ATMs they took down in one day. People couldn't get money. They almost went into a blackout. They didn't shut down the power because they were worried that there were people in the hospital. They didn't want this to look bad. But it's amazing what Israel did in just a matter of a few days. I don't know how anybody in Iran says that they've got the upper hand on this.
No, they don't. Absolutely don't. Unless they acquire support from another country like China.
Because our time is up. Thank you for a very interesting discussion. And we'll see you all in about 2 weeks.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.